Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on the webinar. We're going to walk through the SWEPT implementation of non-major state actions. I'm Pete McGilvery. I work in the Office of Environmental Management. I'll be joined today by Dean Rogers. We're going to go through the presentation. There's a few things I did want to mention to you guys before we get going. We want to make sure everybody attending the webinar gets credit for attending the webinar. So if there are multiple people watching from your single location, if you could use the chat box to type in everybody's names so that we can go back in and make sure that everybody receives credit. We're also recording this webinar and we'll make the recording available. A lot of times these webinars get scheduled and we know everybody out there is very busy. They have lots of competing meetings and not everybody's necessarily free to attend these webinars. So we try to do a good job of making the recording themselves and then providing access to that recording so that people can watch on their own time. It also allows them to come back later if they had some questions about what was said or how to use a form or any of that stuff. They have a resource that they can go back to. So for today, we're going to just do a quick overview of the non-major state action, and then we're going to roll right into demonstrations. If you have any questions, we do have someone monitoring the question box. So feel free to type those in, and throughout the presentation, we'll stop and make sure that we answer your questions. We're not anticipating this to go 60 minutes. I know we have it scheduled for an hour. If I had to guess, starting off right now, I think it's probably going to be about 30 minutes. So it should be fairly quick, and hopefully you guys will gain some more time back to work on other activities throughout the day. So for the non-major state actions, obviously it's the state equivalent. Make sure you guys can see it. The non-major state actions, some key features about it. If you think about within SWEPT, when we did the type 1 implementation, that's obviously for the federal projects, and obviously for the state version, it's the non-major state actions. As you can see, it's part 1, chapter 10, state, local, and privately funded project delivery, and this process is described in there in that chapter. It talks about the documentation requirements and how to complete the checklist. I'll have a couple of slides that refer you back to the chapter. We do have these chapters completely being, they're about to be released because under NEPA assignment we needed to update all the chapters to reflect that change in responsibilities. We're expecting the updated chapters out within the next month. The piece we're going to go over today has not changed substantially. Part of what you will see is the SWEPT implementation piece. You'll see that in the revised chapter. And that will be one of the changes. But other than that, it's pretty much the same. One of the things that we'll talk about when we show the form is, much like you guys have seen us work on other forms, enhancements to the type 1 that we've seen that you know we're implementing, enhancements to the reevaluation form, which we did a webinar and made that available just a few weeks ago. We're anticipating there'll be changes to this form at some point, but there aren't any changes now. But if we talk about the non-major state action and the SWEPT implementation, much like the type 1, it's an action that occurs in the district. It's going to be an electronic paperless process, a very simple, form that's been turned into an electronic form. It routes through and receives district level approval, and you can also create the state version of that environmental certification. Because it's all electronic, it's going to be passed through the process, so you could have a data entry person creating it or a project manager creating it and then electronically passing it up to the district environmental manager for signature. There's obviously email prompts and tracking for all of that stuff. By creating and approving the non-major state action within SWEPT, it's integrated with the electronic document management system. When the document is approved and the certification is approved, that also takes a copy of that and the supporting files, just like the Type 1, and moves it to the EDMS, which also makes those documents available in other applications. So things like Project Suite Enterprise Edition, by going through this electronic process and it being stored in EDMS, it also makes it available in those other systems. Similar to other types of documents within the SWEPT application, because everything's in a central location and we're handling file management and retention requirements based on the project file, all of that is handled specifically within SWEPT. So it recognizes when it should retain the files and when it should purge the files based on when the project is closed out. So who actually, out of the entire user community within SWEPT, uses this particular piece of the application? And you'll notice I crossed out a lot of the folks that have access to SWEPT but aren't necessarily a part of this specific process. You've got the district project managers, whether that's a design project manager, whether it's a PD&E project manager, it's someone with that particular role that can create the non-major state action. You can have team members. Team members could be your consultant staff, individuals that have data entry. It could be the staff within your district, folks that you want to have that ability to create non-major state actions. And then similar to a Type 1, it's the district environmental managers that are approving those non-major state actions. They don't need to go beyond that. For larger documents within SWEPT, you've got to upload stuff in the ERC, you've got to create an environmental document submittal form. Just like the Type 1, you don't need to do any of that stuff. All of the routing and approval stays right locally within the district. Just a couple of screen captures referring back to the chapter. For instance, section 10.2.1.4, the documentation of a non-major state action, tells you some of the things that are part of the consideration and how to use the checklist. It also has some instructions for completing the checklist and what it should contain, and there's some elements within that chapter that describe all those things. We've also developed a quick guide for you guys for completing a non-major state action. So within the SWEPT application under Help and under Quick Guides, this quick guide will be loaded. But very simply at a high level, you get started, very similar to a Type 1. You're typing in your FM number, you're entering in your project limits and descriptions. It's pulling some of the information from work program, very simplified form. You go through and answer the various questions and provide your evaluation. Again, are we looking at no's? Are we providing analysis? And are we having supporting documentation? Very similar to how you do the Type 1s. You can have somebody can work on it and save it as a draft. Within this form, it also identifies who's the preparer versus who's the approver. So there is a reassign button if I'm the person that's tasked with preparing the document, but I'm not going to finish, and I need to reassign it to someone else so that they're the individual that shows up as the preparer. There's functionality within there. When you're uploading documents, there's a little interface. Again, it's very similar to the Type 1, where you basically, like you're attaching an email, you browse to a file, you identify the name and the document date, and then the type of document it is. If it's supporting documentation, then all the various questions are there listed, and you can map that one document to a subset. You can map it to one, you can map it to multiple, you can map multiple documents that answer multiple questions if you need to, and you have the form itself where you can summarize your analysis or what you saw. Ultimately, the preparer sends it to be approved, and depending on where it is in the process, it could be going directly to the environmental manager, and then receiving an email notification prompting the environmental manager to, just like everything else, click on a link. It opens up the form. You're completely focused on that project already. The environmental manager could update it if they want. They could also send it back to the preparer to maybe supplement with some more information if needed, and ultimately they can approve that non-major state action. Here's just a couple of the form, just screenshots, and this is Dean's going to go into more detail of actually going through this process for you guys. And just showing some of the functionality in here, uploading the document, saving draft, sending for approval, or even the assignment. Now, one of the things I did mention at the very beginning is that we're recording this webinar. So we'll send out an email to everybody who registered to attend the webinar, and it'll have a link to its location. But it will also be uploaded. If you haven't been to OEM's training site lately, it's been revamped quite a bit. It was revamped to include various tracks and be updated to include some responsibilities coming to the department through NEPA assignment. And so it was a great opportunity to kind of look at the inventory of resources. And so it's been reorganized into various tracks. This particular webinar will live under SWEPT, the statewide environmental project tracker piece. That's track number 2 on here, and just like any other, the rest of these videos. So if you happen to miss any webinars, you can always go to that particular track and you can see a whole host of training activities. Ruth, do we have a question?
Yeah, one question came in a little earlier. Is the retention for NMSA in EDMS 99 years? No,
it's not 99 years. I'd have to go back and relook specifically what it is. I think it's actually very similar to what we're doing with the federal documents. I believe it's still 5 years, but I think the starting point for determining the 5 years is not the same starting point for the federal documents. So I just have to verify what that close is, but we'll manage that, and we'll know when that project reaches that milestone. Then we'll start counting 5 years. When the 5 years are up, we'll send a request to the EDMS with that FM number that says this file has reached its retention, and we'll request to purge for that. Good question. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dean. And Dean, let me go ahead and make you the presenter so you can show these guys. So I'm going to hand it to you, Dean, if you could make sure you show your screen.
All right. Thank you, Pete. So I'm logged in the statewide environmental project tracker application. I'm going to be utilizing our test server environment. I'm going to log in as a District 2 SWEPT project data entry role. So I'll go ahead and do that now. Sign in. This is going to take me to our home page. Under Project Input Setup on the menu items on the left is where you'll find the non-major state action checklist. So here we're looking at the form. And to start this process, we're going to enter an FM number from work program. And I'm going to load that. That's going to pull in the information, including the project name, the county, as well as the FM number and a link to the project page. So moving down to the project description, there's a text box that has rich text so you can bold or italicize or underscore. And for the purposes of this, well, first I'm going to start off with project limits. Again, this is just a test. I'm going to enter the project description. The information we're going to input here, the manual chapter for non-major state action will provide guidance on inputting the project description. Now we're going to look at the evaluation, and there are 12 questions that we will go through. Again, to fill out the text box, you're going to look for guidance from the chapter. These questions, in order to fit the criteria for a non-major state action, all must be no. If you do click yes, you'll get guidance that by checking this box, the project does not meet the criteria of a non-major state action. Evaluate whether an environmental impact report or SEER will be necessary. So for the first example, I'm just going to put in some text. The document provided, there's a green checkbox that says you have provided that information. And select no. So going further down, I'm going to show you that we can select no for all the other options. And I want to show you how you can upload a document and map that document to each one of these questions to provide that supporting documentation. So I'm going to choose a file, a test supporting documentation document, PDF. I can change the name here. I can also change the date. I'm going to say this is supporting documentation for all but one, because for one, I had some text that I input there as supporting text. I want to click Save. The checkbox is now set for each one of the questions, and we can save the draft. Now we're ready. Here is provided below that document. Now we're ready to send for approval. This approval will go to the district environmental manager. So I've sent that approval. At this point, if I did want to withdraw, I could go to the bottom and withdraw this with comment. That can be done before the environmental manager if you found you had some more information and you wanted to update this. Hitting withdraw would put it back in a draft status. So I'm going to log out and go to manager. And I will open that email. And you will see the information on the project that is provided, the FM number, the project name, District 2, and a link provided. So the District Environmental Manager can simply click this link, and it'll take them directly to SWEP. And it'll take them to the non-major state action checklist for their review. So I'm logged in as the District Environmental Manager. I'm going to go through the form, make sure all the information that is provided is accurate.
Go a little slower. It's
Catching up.
the webinar's a little slower than you are.
Okay. So scrolling to the bottom, I have the opportunity now. You'll see some information on here. Select an approval status option and click the submit button. So I can approve this as a non-major state action, or I can kick it back to the data entry person and get more and let them know that we need more information.
You can also, because the district environmental manager is the approval authority within the district, if you saw something that you personally just felt, oh, it's quicker, I can just update it, or I can attach the document, or I can add the analysis, you're more than welcome to do that as well. So you can approve it directly, you could edit and then approve, and you can also send it back down to the data preparer if they needed to do some more work on it.
Thank you, Pete. So for the purposes of the demo, I'm going to go ahead and click approve as a non-major state action and submit. So now you'll see at the top of the screen, we have the state environmental certification. And as the district environmental manager, I can go through the approval process here by clicking the state environmental certification link. And I can approve. So the state environmental certification has been approved. I'm going to go to the project page on the top right. You'll see the icon here for the project. And scrolling down, you will see here under Project Documents, Environmental Review Process, the non-major state action checklist has been approved. This is a PDF that we can open, as well as the state environmental certification approval. So if I wanted to look at that, I can go to that PDF. And here we have the PDF of the checklist that has been approved. So that is the process for the non-major state action checklist. We see our approvals here. I wanted to point out that under the Help menu, we have our quick guides. And here you'll see completing the non-major state action checklist. Here's a PDF. That is a guide that Pete went over in the beginning. He had a slide on that, and he briefly went through it. But that it's located for you here. I also want to remind you that this webinar is being recorded, and this recording will also be available under the training videos.
Can you also show them that if they wanted to do, say they already had a project that they completed a non-major state action on, but they needed to complete the state environmental certification, can you just show them the left-hand menu on there as well? They could have used that left-hand menu to get there.
Yes.
Too. So there's multiple spots to get there. Looking in the question box, it looks like I've got one question. Were both approvals done by the same person, the DEA? So that person, the district environmental manager, is the person who would approve the non-major state action, and they're the same person that would sign off on the environmental certification. You can do the non-major state action and the environmental certification one right after another, or you could do them separated in time. It really just depends on what your business case is and what you're trying to accomplish. So I think we've hit everything we needed to hit for you guys. I think it was a very fast demo. Another question that just came in is, when will this go live? It will go to production tonight, so it'll be live tomorrow for you guys. We'll stay on just a few more minutes to see whether or not there's other questions. Let's see. The example is a bridge replacement that appears to have federal fund number. Does the system know that if federal funds are somewhere on the project and non-major state action is not applicable? So the answer is, this is all test data that we're looking at on stage. So we're not necessarily handling those issues, but in the non-major state action, it assumes you know your FM and what you're performing a non-major state action on. Another question, will we be able to enter a related FM for projects with different sequence numbers? Yes, you will. Just like in a type 1. For non-major state action, is the environmental cert, do you have to fill out the form in SWEPT, or is it automatically populated like the type 1 form? Automatically populated like the type 1 form. That's the answer. Project you're on, so it's already pulling that information forward. So when you did your description and you did all those details, it just carries forward into the environmental cert. You're welcome, Ann. Okay, not seeing any other questions in the chat. Oh, we got one more. Can you process a state environmental certification without the checklist? In other words, a project moves to construction and you need the certification. It's a good question. I'm actually not sure. I think the project would initially need to be set up in order to do the environmental certification. Terry, I'll follow back up with you on that one. Will there be a tab for the federal environmental certification? There absolutely will be in the left-hand menu a link to the federal environmental certification. Should be coming out shortly. What's that? Yeah. Start date to use. It's going live tomorrow. Excellent. Okay, everybody. If you have any other questions, that feel free to contact me or contact an email through SWEPT Help. Can you actually circle that? So when you're logged on to SWEPT, there's always the emails at the bottom. Everybody should always know that SWEPT email goes to the entire team and it goes to management. So that's a really good way to get a hold of us and ask a question. There's obviously a phone number to the help desk, or there's always someone manning the desk to help you through stuff. That's all we've got today. So take care, enjoy the rest of your week, and you'll see an email from me when the recording has been converted, and I'll follow up with an email sending that out and making it available online. So take care and have a great day.